Here's the sadpack.com website. We're going to go right to Mr. Thandahar's Articles of Impeachment. And you should really read this page because it tells you why and how impeachment is not the proper way to go about it. There is the paragraph where Mr. Thandahar is referenced as to filing the Articles of Impeachment. Here are his Articles of Impeachment. They are official. They are filed. The problem with this, and we'll go through them more in detail later, is that nowhere in the articles does he cite what high crimes and misdemeanors have been violated. He uses the word, and nowhere that we found does he cite a specific congressional law that's violated. It starts out with all this conceptual concepts of a plan, and all of it's true, but it doesn't, like a complaint needs to. It doesn't identify specifically what Trump has violated. What crime has he committed? For instance, 18 U.S.C. 241 is a bit amorphous. It makes it a crime to oppress, threaten, intimidate, or injure any person in America, basically by any act, words, speech, physical action. And this is what Trump and the Trump administration has violated. Now, Trump personally didn't go out there and round up people. And so for Trump, it's a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation because he allows it to go on. He didn't see to the faithful execution of the laws. So his violation is to his duty to see that the laws are faithfully executed, not against citizens, but for citizens to promote justice, domestic tranquility, and to form a more perfect union. These articles of impeachment are official. They are filed. Something will have to happen on them. But while all of these words are great and true, they don't identify specifically what Trump did. Impeachment is an in personam thing. And the way he's slipped out of many things in the past is because he did not personally do them. And this does not indicate anywhere that he's violated his oath of office as to any specific congressional law. And it goes on, and I don't really know how many pages there are. I think there's something like 9. This is page 6. And you can see there's not a single place 18 U.S.C. anything is cited. Now, he goes on with the articles. Usurpation, this is Article 2 of the Articles of Impeachment. Usurpation of the appropriations power Okay, so they're just basically trying to say Trump is, you know, violated what is Congress's duty. He does speak to Section 9 of Article 1 of the Constitution. And that's good. But the issue is simple. What has Trump personally done against people that violate a specific law? Section 9 of Article 1 is a constitutional violation. And it states that he may be impeached for a violation of that. But he links it weakly. Impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. What crime did he commit? What section of congressional law, criminal congressional law, 18 U.S.C., is the congressional criminal law? What section has he violated? Section or sections? Now, the SADPAC resolution that's also found on this site specifically cites all of those. Nothing in these articles does. And impeachment is a cumbersome, hard to prove way. It ends with a vote of a jury in the Senate where 67 senators must vote to convict. Well, anybody who can count knows that that is so unlikely to happen. This is a big exercise in futility. It is a fool's errand. But it's a good start. Now, Mr. Thandahar could file the proper resolution and automatically force the vote under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and accomplish a summary result by simply modifying these articles of impeachment, turning it into specific articles of not impeachment, articles of as to Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, where he identifies 1, the conduct, 2, the specific congressional law rebelled against or part of the Constitution rebelled against, and 3, prove it by any public record available. That includes a YouTube video. That is a summary proceeding that would flush the Trump administration without all this cumbersome impeachment stuff. The next thing that happens in impeachment is they have to vote on the articles of impeachment, and then if they pass out of the House, then impeachment managers have to be appointed. Somebody has to set up a prosecution. Somebody has to argue a case before the Senate. And in the end, the Republicans in the Senate are just going to say, so what? And they could easily say, so what? You haven't shown anything specific that has been specifically violated as to a congressional law. Where are the high crimes and misdemeanors? It's not just a name, it has to be something. Now, we're on to page 10. Again, there's a lot of recitation of what was done. Here's Article 2 of abuse of trade powers and international aggressions. Okay, again, you need some congressional laws that have been violated, not just mention of something. And it goes on and on, like someone at a bar talking about what he did. We all know this. The law needs to know what's been violated. Then he's got violation of First Amendment rights. Okay, that this probably has to be birthright citizenship. Well, maybe not. It could be anything. It could be the religious argument. It could be freedom of the press. There's a number of things in the First Amendment. And he starts out with this catch-all that the Constitution provides that the House shall have the power of impeachment, and the president shall be removed for conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes. And then he goes on and doesn't identify it. Doesn't identify specifically what is the crime. What is the he puts up a description of what should be the crime, but doesn't link it to a specific congressional law. And it goes on, and again, nowhere in the Articles of Impeachment, and I don't really know how many he's got, but we just passed, what, Article 4? And here's Article 5, unlawful office. He's talking about Doge, I'm sure. And you're welcome to go to SADPAC and open this up, download it, and read it. And read it from the standpoint that if you're going to make a complaint in a court of law, a judge is going to need to see what brings the jurisdiction here, what law has been violated. He doesn't do that. Doge was originally the U.S. Digital Services agency, and they just changed it, and they reworked the framework. A previous video was put out on that. You visit the Wilbur Union YouTube page and watch some of the other videos. We're not about slick, my face is in here, look at me, like Miss Denson is. At the end of her video, she says, I did this, I did that. She hasn't done anything. She hasn't done anything but cloud the whole thing and got a bunch of people following her down the wrong road. Now, there's Article 6, bribery and corruption. Well, I'm sure that has to do with his meme coin and his other grifting out of the White House. But again, there is no mention of 18 USC anything. At least the last impeachment of Trump it was only one article, and it was incitement to insurrection. That is 18 USC 2383. Even Mitch McConnell referred to it, and then Jack Smith went off and forgot about it, and Trump slipped out of all of that. So, Article 7, tyranny. Where is tyranny? Where is tyranny in the Constitution? I don't believe it's there. What he's trying to say is it doesn't promote justice, domestic tranquility, nor to form a more perfect union. That would be a constitutional violation. That would be a rebellion to the Constitution, but he calls it tyranny. Mr. Thandahar is not an attorney. And I don't know who on his staff is or was or who actually drafted these. But he needs to refile better document because we already know impeachment will not result in a 67 vote conviction to remove Trump from office in the Senate. And even if it did, we're left with the Trump administration. The J.D. Vance becomes the president, and everybody else still right there in place. The proper procedure, and although it has never been done before, is to annul the Trump presidency, going back with a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation charge as to January 6, 2021, where Trump violated Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, attempting to stay in power past 4 years by inciting a riot, not an insurrection, inciting a riot in rebellion to that article and clause and section of the Constitution that requires him to leave office after 4 years, if not reelected. Instead, he tried a fake elector scheme, and there is the crime. See, there is the crime, a fake elector scheme. That's fraud against the government. And Jack Smith was in part right in his complaint, but there is a huge difference. He made a complaint that would have gotten Trump convicted. He just went about it wrong. And Mr. Garland took too long to appoint Jack Smith. Jack Smith went about it wrong, and nowhere did he mention 18 U.S.C. 2383. So, up next is a quick look at Rachel Maddow. On her 100-day analysis is basically domestic terrorism. There he's grabbing anybody off the streets and just shipping them off, threatening them with letters, on and on and on. And then behind that, we'll have Jessica Denson and her silliness. Now, God bless her, but she's not an attorney. She's not even legally trained. And she can't even really legally focus. She says, I'll take anything. I'm in favor of anything. No, you can't. Can't be in favor of anything. There is one procedure. You can't say, oh, he murdered my mom, but I'll take a parking ticket. No, because that's what this is. He has murdered the Constitution, and you're charging him with a parking ticket because you haven't identified anything that he's actually done wrong in violation of a specific congressional law in rebellion to the Constitution as required. Now, a summary proceeding could end this by simply drafting better articles. And in this case, a simple resolution to call for the amnesty vote to excuse all this conduct will not succeed. You will not get 2/3 majority vote in both houses today anymore. He might have had a chance when he first took the presidency, but 100 days in, he has screwed the pooch so badly, Mr. Trump will not reach a 2/3 majority vote in both houses, even if he makes it in one house. It has to be both houses. So it's a better standard. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is a better standard than this impeachment crap. Impeachment is just so well known because it was the first thing in the Constitution. Well, the Constitution then was amended. The 14th Amendment realized this impeachment is never going to work. We can't use this to get rid of insurrectionists when they are in the government. And Lawrence Tribe goes on and he says that's exactly why Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was created. These people who are in the government would never enforce the Constitution. So now the Constitution has a very clever mechanism to protect itself. And the weak part is it needs one member to properly draft private legislation against those members of government, those officers, to make them answer to the conduct, the accusations, and the proof presented that they have violated their oath of office and are in rebellion to the Constitution of the United States. It's amateur hour in America. Nobody's doing that. While every other MSNBC host is doing their 100-day analysis on Trump, Rachel Maddow took the position that this has been nothing but a mess with Trump and his immigration and deportation issues. He's trying to throw everybody and anybody out of the country. There's the URL up at the top, so you're welcome to go find it. I'm not going to play much of this. It just eats up time. There's the title. There's the date it was published, April 29th.
And we keep seeing U.S. citizens turn up in stories that are ostensibly about immigration enforcement or something having to do with immigration. I mean, Trump's immigration agents have told at least 9 U.S. citizen lawyers, doctors, teachers that they had 1 week to get out of the country or else. U.S. citizens, where are they supposed to go? First it was...
Now I'm going to stop there because the point here is this is domestic terrorism. Nobody seems to be identifying laws being broken here. This is the biggest amateur hour in America, well, that has existed. I don't want to say that I've ever seen, because it is that has ever existed. Everybody wants to emotionally complain about what Trump is doing wrong, and no one is seeming able to connect it to law. You need to say what these people are doing that is illegal and what is the problem with them in government. Now here, 2 things are illegal. This is domestic terrorism under 18 U.S.C. 2331 sub 5. And it's domestic terrorism because it violates 18 U.S.C. 241 in that, it oppresses, it threatens, it injures. It does everything that is prohibited by that statute, which is called a civil rights statute. But when it comes to government officials, you don't need to go to court. They just need to have violated it. And then it becomes a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation. Now, Representative Thandahar, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but it looks like it says Thandahar, has filed articles of impeachment. Great. It's a great move because as is shown in the Jessica Denson clip a little further on, it forces people on Capitol Hill to start talking about it. Now, it's the understanding that Mr. Johnson has pulled this stunt where he has considered the entire session 1 day. So, I don't know how those articles are going to get to the floor for a vote. But the issue is very simple and very clear. The articles are wholly deficient. They may or may not be voted up, but they are just as easily voted down. Anybody could say, what are you charging him with? How is this going to be proved in the Senate? it could be objected to legally. Now, Mr. Thandahar is not an attorney. He's 70 years old. It's like another Al Green, 77 years old. At least Al Green was barking about articles of impeachment. We haven't seen any. At least Thandahar did it. Now, there's a curious thing about his articles of impeachment, because the sadpack.com resolution, the head of it, has some tail triggers in it. And that tail trigger exists in Mr. Thandahar's articles. So you're welcome to go find Rachel and listen to her run her mouth about everything wrong. She doesn't mention a single law violated. I just did. 18 U.S.C. 241 injures, oppresses, threatens, and intimidates. See, that alone, right there, is the law that's been violated, 18 U.S.C. 241. And it is classified as, defined as, domestic terrorism under 18 U.S.C. 2331, sub 5, parentheses 5. And then conceptually, it violates the Constitution in the preamble. It does not promote justice, domestic tranquility, nor to form a more perfect union. It does the opposite. So let's move on to Jessica Denson. Okay, here is Jessica Denson. This is her video on the Thandahar articles of impeachment. There is the title, and there is the date it was posted. It appears to have been run as a live stream. There is a URL up at the top. You can stop at the ampersand T equals 1200, because that's where this is going to jump to. Most of the video is a mouth. Just mouth, 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 mouth. They do have an attorney on the show, a Hannah Barclay, who says, wrongly, the articles of impeachment is the only way to get rid of him. This is where I'm so sick of these people spouting off wrongness. The best thing to do is have a counterpoint, some counterpoint, who will check this wrongness. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was created after the Constitution was crafted. And that's what an amendment does. It modifies a weak part of the contract. The weak part being impeachment doesn't work when you have a government full of insurrectionists. So give the power to the document itself. That's what Section 3 of the 14th Amendment does. It says if you rebel against the document, the Constitution, or you create and participate in an insurrection against the document, against the Constitution of the United States, then you're barred from office. And nothing more. That's what the Supreme Court said. Nothing more is needed. So the problem is, in actualization, there is one step needed. It has to go before Congress to actually make it work. That's what the Trump v. Anderson ruling determined. So we'll just jump to where this is partly relevant, because she's talking to an ex-staffer.
To the audience, because you have such insight both into the actual impeachment process and to the thinking of these members of Congress. Maybe, just start out there, because you and I were having a conversation about how much fear, in particular the Republicans. And by the way, what do we need? We need like 5.
The problem I have with Jessica Denson is, don't put yourself on camera where you're looking off into space, and you're waving arms around. If you have a cohesive article of argument, you don't need to show your face. But when you do, you show a distraction of how you look crazy. This looking off into space, rolling your eyes up into the head. No. Now, this staffer here was a staffer for Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota. And he does say some things that are poignant to this scenario. He talks about how they're scared, they're confused. Capitol Hill's a chicken little place. Everybody's running around talking about the sky is falling. And you can't get any of them together, just like herding cats. He doesn't say herding cats, but that's the analogy. So let's see if we can I'm not going to waste a lot of time with Jessica, because she just runs her mouth.
A handful of Republicans.
Yeah, I think it's actually 4 right now.
4.
I think, with all the vacancies. Yeah.
We would only need 4 Republicans for this to pass out of the House of Representatives.
Out of the House and go
but
where?
You and I were talking about the level of fear and just the miserable lives that many of these Republicans live with because of being basically a slave to this con man.
She doesn't understand which fear they're talking about. The fear they're talking about are as to Trump supporters. The unhinged lone wolf crazy MF who will show up with a gun or a truck and try and run them down, kill them. That's the fear. And they're hoping, can't we just somehow naturally remove Trump and then these people won't rise up? Well, I don't see that happening. They're going to rise up anyway because they're crazy. This is what happens when you let mental illness fester and you let insurrectionists continue to be a voting participant in society. 18 U.S.C. 2383 strips office holding rights. It would strip gun holding rights. And as a convicted felon, they would lose their voting rights. That's what needs to be done, not talking about it. There's the old joke about the prostitute who says, I can identify a Republican versus a Democrat instantly. The Republican comes in, gives you the money, gets right down to business, crazy. The Democrat sits on the edge of the bed and wants to talk about it. That's what we have here. Jessica Denson seems to think that talking about it is doing something. It is not. Doing something is what Representative Thandahar did. At least he tried filing the Articles of Impeachment. Now she's all excited about something that's going to fail. And so she's out here spouting this off to her listeners instead of being critical of those documents. That document is not the way to do it.
Who they know is an enemy of the state. What freedom awaits these people if they just step over onto the right side of history? Talk to me a little bit about that.
I find the fear, it is real. It's real. And obviously, this is a scary time. Very scary president. Blah, blah, blah. However, of course, everybody in Congress has the power to remove him from office. So the fear is somewhat irrational.
And that's the best thing he said so far. Everybody in Congress has the power to remove him from office. How? Well, drafting and filing a resolution calling for an amnesty vote as to some conduct he has done in violation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment in rebellion to the Constitution and or congressional laws. Okay, 18 U.S.C. 2383 defines insurrection and rebellion. And that is any physical operation or rebellion to congressional laws, violation of congressional laws. Let's go on. Got that one right.
It is.
Because it's directed in the wrong place. Like,
Yeah.
if I was a member of Congress and I was afraid of Trump and what he would do, the first thing I would try to do is remove him from power.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it just seems, like, it seems pretty straightforward. And
my God.
I think, like, one thing a lot of people,
Except he too has got it wrong. They're not afraid of Trump. They're afraid of losing their $178,000 a year job where they don't have to do anything. And they're afraid of Trump supporters coming out of the weeds to burn down their house, key their car, run them over, shoot them dead. That's what they're afraid of. Trump has brought these crazies of the country out of the woodwork and emboldened them. Social media has connected them together where they can put together a militia like the Proud Boys has and the Oath Keepers has. And they're, these types needed to be in jail, and Trump let them all out. That's what they're afraid of. They came to the Capitol once, wanted to kill everybody. They'll come back again.
outside of Congress assume about Congress is like, oh, everybody's really tightly coordinated. Everything you're seeing is like they're all talking with each other.
Well-oiled machine, no.
Yeah. And like, to be fair, I think people kind of like, especially now because it's just gotten so ridiculous, right? Like they're starting to. There's a lot more people picking up on like, oh wow, maybe this isn't as organized as I thought it was. But
By the way, for our audience, Gabe is a former Senate staffer. He worked for Tina Smith, Senator Tina Smith, so he's been on the Hill. He knows those halls very well.
yes, yeah. I mean, it's like, honestly, there is so much chaos in both chambers of Congress. And yeah, like, one of the reasons it's been so amazing to actually see this impeachment article introduced is because I know this is forcing conversations. It is forcing them to all talk to each other about it. There has been news coverage. Honestly, I think like the primary focus of everybody was to get the articles out the door because we just need to start having this conversation as soon as possible. So it doesn't like shock me that there's not like, wall-to-wall breaking news. It takes time to like send out press releases and do all that work. But I do know, like, I was reading like an article and like the leader of the Democrats in the House, Jeffries, was directly asked about this, right? And he said, like, I didn't even know about this was coming, which is great, by the way. Not his, honestly, everybody in the House can submit whatever they want, whenever they want. It's not really his prerogative. Yeah, and that means a reporter contacted him. Now their office needs to think about that. Everybody else needs to think about it. And I want to see these offices. Some of these offices I am very well aware because I've been with our organization. I've been trying to get them on the record for the last 3 weeks. I am well aware a lot of these offices, their private position is something like, oh, well, yeah, but we can't talk about impeaching him. We can talk about all the other stuff except removing him. And I'd love to see them public.
He's right. They can't talk about impeaching him, but it's not because they don't want to. It's because the impeachment will not work. They do want to remove him, but they know impeachment will ultimately not work. Never will work. They will never get 67 senators to vote to convict or remove him. And when and if they do, we're left with Vance and the entire administration. So the House and the Senate, the Hill completely, is in disarray because they don't know how to correct their own effing mistake they made on January 6th, 2025, by even counting his votes. Well, it's very easy. you file a resolution to go back and call for the amnesty vote based on all those Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violations that have gone unregistered. Register them in a complaint, file it with the clerk, just like this resolution of Articles of Impeachment was, and force the 2/3 amnesty vote. They're not going to make that. See, you skip right past all of this crap, go right to the 2/3 vote. If he cannot get a 2/3 vote to excuse all the conduct delineated in a resolution calling for an amnesty vote on all of that conduct, as that sadpack.com resolution shows. And you could add more. You could take the Thandahar in Articles of Impeachment and weave those in there and cite the specific laws violated to those things, those articles in there that he's delineated, although there's no such thing as tyranny. That's a high crime and misdemeanor. I don't get that one. But that's what you get with amateur hour when these people are not attorneys. He's not an attorney. She's not an attorney. And she's really not an attorney. She's ding dong, lights on, nobody's home. But yet she thinks she's doing something. And she is. She's got a bunch of people who are trying to follow this and who want this to happen. And right now she's the lone wolf. Okay, but somebody needs to step in now and push her aside, because she's not an attorney. She's got it all wrong. It's a big confusing mess, and somebody has to straighten it out. Somebody with a law degree.
Quickly talk about that. So let's have that conversation, because that's like obviously a ridiculous argument.
It is.
Yeah, and I also want to see these Republican offices. A lot of them I know. I think it's very obvious from all the reports.
It's not a ridiculous argument because, as I just said, what he's talking about is we can't talk about impeaching him because it won't work. They know it won't work. It's not a ridiculous argument. It's the correct argument. They just need to be given another argument that will work. Now, members of Congress have been sent faxes of the cover page of the original resolution that was posted at sagpack.com. At least 75 faxes have gone out. Most of them with good sins. It was only 3 pages. So the concept has been on the hill for quite a while. Don't know what staffer read it, if somebody filed it away, never got to mention it to the actual congressional member, or what. But it's been out there. Many legal scholars have been sent emails with the link to the actual resolution. No one has responded back saying this will not work. No one has engaged on saying this will not work. What it is everybody is afraid of Trump supporters. These lone wolf crazies out here who think that Trump was the greatest thing since sliced bread. That now, as time has gone on, now they're beginning to see they're wrong. There's always going to be a 25 to 30% bunch of knuckleheads who are just never going to understand if and until they get screwed over. And even then, you know what? They may not understand it even then. That's how dumb some people are. And it's a nasty thing to say that people are stupid and dumb. But after all, we're just monkeys that stand upright and have an organized society. Humans are not all created equal. Some are highly intelligent, and they're what are known as modern anatomical humans. They traditionally are identified by a vertical forehead, no bumps over the eyes, no deep-set eyes. those are the ones with the brains that know how to think. You can take a breed of dog, and there are dogs that are just dumb. You know, there are dogs that are just dumb because that's how they're bred. Then there are dogs that are highly intelligent. And we say that, you know, like, what does that mean? You know, I mean, dogs that can navigate, know where they are, know how to go get help for their so-called master, which is basically their friend. Well, that they even have a friend that's a human. That's a sign of intelligence. So, wolves, on the other hand, are just tribal beasts. You may, if you raise one from a puppy, you may have a friend. I saw a coyote the other day walking through a parking lot, and it was definitely, absolutely a coyote. It was a little emaciated, it was thin because it wasn't eating well, but it was a coyote. It was not a dog. Some people don't even know how to identify the difference, and that's what we have with human beings. You need to look at what you're looking at and know why these people all think the way they think. They're not modern anatomical humans. Put them on a whole genome sequence and find out how much Neanderthal DNA they have, along with other genetic issues that are not modern anatomical humans. Back to Gabe.
That's come out of Congress over years. People discount it, but it's definitely real that they're all like, I think that he sucks, and I think he is an awful person, but I'm afraid to do anything. I know that they all are having to read these. And they're, for perhaps the first time since Trump has gotten to office, having to read through like a listing out of all of his impeachable offenses that he has done over the course of, what are we in, a little over 3 months? Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's starting these conversations and like moving people. When people are in bubbles, that's when dangerous stuff happens. It happens. It's such a big problem in Congress. They are constantly. They are just kind of. I've campaigned for more staffer rights in Congress just because the way it's structured. A lot of staffers don't have basic labor laws applied to them, so they can't even speak out in their own offices without fear of losing their own jobs.
So there you have it. Now imagine this fax comes in and the staffer thinks that this is extremely important and that the congressional member needs to look at it and take it seriously. No, they're going to just file it away in the circular file because they could lose their job over it. They could, the member who already has a preconceived notion that something's not going to work, your staffer is never going to, convince that person that they're going to work. Jasmine Crockett is an extremely strong personality. Do you think a staffer is going to tell her, with all her famousness, that she needs to take a look at this? No. What happens with Jasmine Crockett is her faxes are cut off mid-transmission. They just literally hang up the phone. That's an old attorney trick. Old attorney trick where they don't want to be served with a fax. They just cut off the fax machine so you don't get a good send. But it begins to connect and begins to send. And depends on what kind of fax you have. If you have a computer-based fax, which these probably are, you're not going to have a standalone fax machine, spitting out paper. They're just not going to have it. This is probably computer-based fax server. And when they hang up the phone, and it's in their office, when they hang up the phone, those first few pages have been sent. They may have even been in real time displayed. So as they hang up the phone. People like Dan Goldman, Eric Swalwell, several others, they don't even have published fax numbers. So they don't want to hear from you at all. So the only way to do that is actually send them physical mail. Well, that gets expensive. And all these people want to talk at you. They want to talk at the American public. The American public who can't do anything. And then they gaslight you, say, we the people, you have the power. No, BS. They are the ones with the power. They are the only ones that can do anything. And Representative Thandahar, as Gabe is saying, has now forced them all to start talking about it. They're going to have to react one way or the other.
The point is, these offices, if like left to their own devices without the people
Yeah.
rising up and demanding things, they will like work themselves into all sorts of ridiculous points of view that don't make any sense. And the only way to deal with that is through sunlight and forcing them to have these conversations. And that's why like these impeachment articles are such a big deal. I mean, yeah, look, the big establishment press is going to do what it's going to do. I'm frankly not really too worried about it because I know the momentum on this is so strong, and we already have polling that shows a majority of Americans support impeachment before an impeachment article was filed about Trump. So this is not going anywhere, and I am
not going away.
And I welcome all of the conversation and feedback from all these members of Congress. And some of the things they're going to say are going to be unbelievably ridiculous, and that's where people come in to go in and be like, this is a really stupid position you've worked yourself into. It's time to actually start moving towards this come hell or high water, because Hannah was right. This is the legal mechanism we have to remove this man from power.
But not the only one. Not the only mechanism. If he's disqualified from and barred from holding office by Congress, that removes him too. What you have is the morons and idiots and ding-dongs who don't know how to think legally as to, is there another way? Is there another way? What else can we do? You read the Constitution and it comes like, well, let's see. If he's barred from office, what then happens? There are things like the Congressional Research Service who've already told you this is a way to remove them from office. The Binkley brief in front of the United States Supreme Court has said this is a way to remove him from office. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment works through quo warranto. It's a way to remove them from office. So no, Hannah was not right. It's not the only way to do it. It is a way to do it. It is the old way to do it. It is the way you're going to run into problems trying to do it. The quick and clean and snap them off the bean way to do it is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment with a properly filed resolution that identifies the conduct, the law violated in rebellion to the Constitution or congressional law, the actual public record proof that it occurred, and then a properly drafted resolution that identifies that and calls for the amnesty vote, because that's what the Trump v. Anderson ruling said. It said Congress can do this at any time. It's also saying only Congress can do this at any time. Everybody read it backwards, just like they're seeing this backwards. No, impeachment is not the only way, and in this case, it is the wrong way, because it leaves the entire insurrective administration in place and replaces Trump with Vance.
I still believe in the rule of law. I still believe in I still believe in Congress's power. I think it's very clear that they can remove him from office.
Yes.
They have the means, the ability, and it is just a matter of pushing them to get there.
Absolutely.
So, unfortunately, he's not articulate in saying what he's trying to say. Miss Denson knows of sadpack.com. She sent a threatening request to remove her name from the page. Or she was going to sue, I guess. So she's read it. She knows it's there. There are things they say in this video where they're answering a question like, oh, really? One person can do this? Well, that's one of the first things sadpack.com says. Only one member need file this resolution. I would bet that Representative Thandahar has read it. I would bet there's a bunch of people on the Hill who have read it, because you can read it at your leisure at any time. You can watch videos from there at any time, and at some point you'll garner the courage to do the right thing. Now, as you can see, this video goes on for 48 minutes. You're welcome to go there and watch the whole thing. It's a waste of time because there's a lot of yappity. And even Hannah doesn't say much as an attorney that's of any value. Gabe is the only one who said anything of any value, of any measure, to identify what's wrong with Congress. And that's why we played this. Not because Jessica Denson has any value. But let's see if we can zip to the end where she's taking all this credit for what she did.
Absolutely. For our new viewers who like, this is the righteous action. I am shielded by all of this spiritual armor of truth, of principle, of self-respect, all of these things I know are going to take me forward. Was it easy? No. Did I have, years of battling Trump in the courts, and was I treated like a political prisoner and all? Yes, but was it worth it? Absolutely. And in the end, I won because I started from that right basis. I never doubted it. We have to start from the right place. If you're new to the chat, if you're new to the show, it starts with you. So thank you all so much for being part of this, Gabe. Thank you. And I will remind everybody to go to your website, citizensimpeachment.com. He's not trying to raise any money, not trying to do anything but get you involved in the salvation of our democracy. Power is in your hands.
And that's where there's a problem, because he needs to be raising money to get any kind of the machine working. Someone needs to bring quo warranto actions that cost money. Nobody's going to do this. Everybody's been sitting around waiting for somebody to do this. Representative Thandahar, it cost him nothing to file the Articles of Impeachment, but they're not going to work. It has cost people money to send faxes and letters. Somebody needs money. Jessica Denson has the nerve, because she's sitting up here talking about like and subscribe, and I'm on Patreon. She's asking for money. And quite frankly, she's not an attorney. This is technically illegal, because she's presenting a legal position, and not only is it practicing law without a license of a sort against the entire country, she's wrong. She's wrong. She's just stumbled along for so long. Now she's talking about impeachment. I'm up for anything. She's wrong. Take one path, stick to it, and get it done. The only path is to annul the Trump presidency, to undo what should have never been done on January 6, 2021. That's what Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, call for amnesty vote, will do. Let's see if we get to the point where she says everything she did. I think that's next, because this is almost the end of the video.
Sign up. Please sign up there at citizensimpeachment.com.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We'll talk again soon, my friend. So thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today on Lights On. Again, this is the home for action. This is the home for what needs to happen right now. to save our democracy. There are constitutional means to get this illegal administration out of power now. They must be used. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe. You can find out more about me at the Jessica Denson, thejessicadenson.com, thejessicadenson.com. I'm also the founder of the 14th Now movement, which you can find out about at nowmarch.org. Nowmarch.org. We will be partnering with the May Day movement. I'm really excited to bring more of their activity to the forefront. I really see these coalitions, these grassroots movements as the actors right now who are doing what needs to be done, and I am going to do everything in my power to amplify them. PSA.
Let's your
I did this
PS.
a couple weeks ago. There is no current fundraising going on for 14th Now. I want to make that incredibly clear. If anybody is attempting to raise funds in the name of 14th Now, please be crystal clear there. That is not a legitimate ask. There is no current fundraising going on for 14th Now. If we have a need in the future, it will be on.
And 6 of one, half dozen of another. Are you stupid? Are you effing stupid? If you're no fundraising going on, then what do you think you're doing? 14th Now is just a word. And it's wrong. You got it all wrong. You don't even know what you're talking about. That's what the problem is with Jessica Denson. Okay? But don't make any mistake about it. Her videos are monetized. She gets money from advertising when these videos play. YouTube puts them up, because they're likely to get views so that YouTube can play ads. And those ads are then shared partly in revenue with her. So, she can't make up the story like she's not making any money on this. She is. She is. And the problem that we have is that she's wrong. The constitutional means she's talking about, she doesn't identify them. She doesn't identify anything about how legally this is done. It's not done by impeachment. That's the guess. That's the wish. That's the word that everybody knows. Impeachment not only will not work, it's not going to work, and then if it does, it leaves us with the Trump administration in place, with Vance as president and Trump as the shadow president, which is what he wanted to be all the time anyway. He doesn't want to do the job. And this is where there's a problem with people like this. You think you're doing something, you've got your head up your rear, you're not doing anything. I don't know who's trying to raise money under 14th Now. Sadpack.com does have a donation link and a donation page. No money's coming in. But the money is specifically slated for things like bringing litigation under quo warranto to remove people from office. If the Attorney General will not do it, a private citizen must do it. A private citizen must do it. They cannot do it pro per. It has to be through a licensed member of the bar who is admitted to the bar in the D.C. District Federal Court. That ain't free. That ain't cheap. Nothing's going to happen until you do that. Mr. Johnson needs to be quo warrantoed, removed from office for what he did in the January 6, 2021 effort. He's guilty. And there's a bunch of others. Marjorie Taylor Greene has been such a lightning rod against justice, domestic tranquility, and to form a more perfect union. She needs to be removed. And I'm sorry, but there is a general need to stop people from being elected who are not attorneys, to stop people from running their mouths like Miss Denson here, who are not attorneys. Now, that doesn't mean all attorneys are good, because, Midas Touch and Ben Meiselas and Mr. Popak are doing a real bad job. All they're after is 5 million subscribers so they can get that money. I don't know what to tell you. She's just as bad as Trump. Of course, it wouldn't be right to conclude a video without some Lawrence O'Donnell. This is a good one. Donnie Two Dolls. There's the URL up at the top. He has Elizabeth Warren on the show, but this clip stops before Elizabeth Warren is interviewed. I'm not sure it matters. There's the full title. And this is the date it was posted, April 30th.
Well, we now have a new possibility for the now years-old guessing game of what Donald Trump's name would be if he were a character on HBO's Emmy-winning gangster series, The Sopranos. If I were in the Sopranos writing room today, my new pitch for the Donald Trump character name would be Donnie Two Dolls. And I'm sure the Emmy-winning creator of The Sopranos, David Chase, would have a...
You gotta go watch it yourself. A little long-winded, so let's jump to the middle.
Entry into this country where those goods arrive. The biggest port of entry for products from China is the port of Los Angeles. Shipping is dropping dramatically in the port of Los Angeles, and so longshoremen and truck drivers, who are the very first American workers to touch those goods as they arrive in the United States, then move through the United States, are facing the possibility of massive job losses thanks to Donald Trump's tariffs. And they...
You get the point.
Might only be...
Let's move to the more closer to the end.
Tariffs are actually doing to prices. Senator Warren wrote to Jeff Bezos saying yesterday's activity appears to be another example of big tech working together with President Trump to seek special favors or support his policies in what can appear to be a quid pro quo. My concerns about the potential for tariff-related corruption to benefit big tech firms who provided millions in donations to the Trump Inaugural Committee and other insiders as the president rolls out, reverses, and modifies his policies, have become more acute with each passing day. And yesterday's report...
And let's be clear, Mr. Trump still and yet has not filed his financial disclosure form. Okay, so he's violating a law right there. He's in rebellion to the law right there. Why it is nobody can seem to use these words to make the case against Trump is really the real story here. It's really the incredulous part of this entire thing. People are too stupid to use the law to get up under Trump and shove him out. Now, let's go to the end where Elizabeth Warren makes her little speech to Congress.
Indicated that you have now personally become involved in key decisions about what consumers can learn about the true cost of tariffs. Tonight on these
telling him Bezos is involved.
And just today, Americans woke up to the news that Donald Trump single-handedly shrunk our economy in 3 months and raised the cost of their groceries. The warning lights are all flashing red. We've seen this before. But this time, our economy is teetering on the edge, not because of a mortgage meltdown or a one-in-a-century virus, but because of one man alone. The President of the United States. If Republicans care about the American people, they will vote yes on our resolution today and turn off the fake emergency that Donald Trump is using to impose his on-again, off-again, red light, green light tariffs, the tariffs that are pushing our economy off a cliff.
And that resolution got tied 49-49. Two Republicans or two senators missed the vote, which would have pushed it over the top. Don't know if they chickened out or chicken littled or whatever. But this is where business as usual in the Congress cannot go on. The Democrats need to pivot to Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, where the minority is the majority. When you couch this in legal terms about conduct, what law it breaks, what right he doesn't have, the fact that it is occurring somehow through proof, public record proof, and then file that before the Congress to force a 2/3 amnesty vote. He must reach 2/3 to excuse the amnesty, to have amnesty, to excuse the conduct. Then it ain't gonna fly. It won't fly. Until the Democrats, the Dumbocrats, wake the F up and realize that's their superpower, this is gonna keep going on. Now, I'm just gonna close with a little splash that has to do with the latest thing that's happening that's just gonna block America and lock us out of the world economy. Now, here's one of those documentary type channels that has nobody's face and just narrates the issue. There's the title, there's the URL up at the top, there's the name of the channel, and there's the date it was posted. Just going to play just a few minutes of this because this is here for you to go find it yourself and watch it.
Of Alaska-bound cargo is shipped by ocean. Trucks carry high-value cargo that needs to be moved quickly. With limited alternative paths, any disruption or additional cost on this route can have a domino effect, impacting everything from fresh produce deliveries to the oil industry. Alaska State Senate Robert Myers, a commercial trucker himself, highlighted the significance of this route, emphasizing that for fast deliveries, trucking is the go-to method. What makes it worse is how slick this move was. There were no fiery press conferences, no bold headlines screaming, "Canada shuts down U.S. supply chain." It was clean, silent, calculated, like a chess move, a quiet swipe of the pen that changed everything without a single gun being fired. And Premier Eby, he's no fool. He knows Alaska is like that last kid picked up from school, isolated, kind of forgotten, and super easy to mess with if the roads get blocked. The geography alone tells the whole story.
And there you have it. Now that jumped into the middle at 5 minutes in. There's still 30 minutes to be seen. I encourage you to go there and look it up. But this is the point. Trump is busy making enemies, not realizing they got bigger guns to fire than he thinks. Canada can mess us up real good. Just the fact that he had the nerve to say that Canada should be the 51st state illustrates just how effing stupid he is. Just as his own sister said, he's effing stupid. I've discovered that people who are dumb want to think they're smart, and they do things like this. People who are smart think before they do things like this. They're like, oh, that's probably not a good idea because then somebody else is going to do this. I don't know if Trump knows how to play chess, but it sure looks like he doesn't. It sure looks like the whole world does. Xi Jinping does. Hell, I think even Putin does, although Putin is losing so many pieces off the board that pretty soon it won't matter that he resigns. There'll be no pieces left to move. He'll just be cornered. Xi Jinping knows we don't need to get into a war. We just need to control the world economically. The thing is, we've given China all the technological prowess they need to go so far ahead of the United States. Here's the thing. The standard of living that we enjoy here in America, based on capitalism, is not sustainable. It's not sustainable on a worldwide scale. We cannot manufacture anything here as cheap as almost anywhere else in the world is willing to manufacture it. All we can do is consume it. And how do we make our money? Well, if you followed any of these financial shows, they tell you we don't make money. We are busy borrowing from everybody else. We sell them goods. They don't pay in money. They buy our debt. That isn't going to work for long, especially when you're now giving the richest people in America tax breaks when we need that money to operate the government. To operate the government and include those very same people who he wants to fire and throw out. They are what makes the economy go. They are the people who order from Amazon. They are the people who go to Walmart. They are the people who go into Target. All these companies depend on China for products. Oh, sure. Amazon is a great American company. No, everything on Amazon comes from China. Everything in Walmart comes from China. Pretty much everything in Target comes from China. You're not going to stop that. You're not going to change that. But that's how effing stupid Trump is. Now, these articles of impeachment, good start. Okay, let's keep the ball rolling and get them corrected. All we got to do, and this can be done at any time, anyway. Representative Thandahar could even refile another resolution calling for the amnesty vote. Anybody in the Senate could join and call for the amnesty vote and get around that whole Johnson one-day Congress session crap that may prevent it from coming to the floor for a vote. They could start it in the Senate. And if it doesn't pass there in the Senate, it's over. Trump's out of office. No impeachment needed. Trump doesn't need an impeachment. He's already barred himself from office. He's already removed himself from office. Congress just needs to wake up and realize that Trump has shot himself dead and how to clean up the mess. Okay, this is Jasmine Crockett on her YouTube channel with a quick cell phone record and uplink of a live BS session in between stuff going on in Congress, where the Republicans have voted now to allow Trump to actually deport American citizens. Now, you know, that's ugly. But if done with due process and for certain reasons, that has value. I'm not saying it's a good idea under Trump at all, but there are certain criminals, certain actions, certain things people do which should get them stripped of citizenship and thrown out of the country. But it has nothing to do with why the reasons Trump wants to throw people out of the country. It has to do with breaking congressional laws. Insurrectionists, 18 U.S.C. 2383, 2384, 2331, 1918, 241. Those are all congressional laws which have a component of nasty citizenship. These are people who don't want to be Americans. You can move on to these Christian national people who don't want to follow the Constitution. They're in rebellion to the Constitution, and they want to lie to you and pull all kind of slippery stuff, there are also people who are un-American, don't want to be Americans. And in such a case, yeah, they should be thrown out of the country. It should become truly a privilege to live in America. And when you want to crap on America, see ya. But if you don't believe me, that's what is going on. This is the URL up at the top. There is her quick title. This was done on a cell phone in between sessions, and this is the date it was uploaded. YouTube, actually, and maybe it's Jasmine Crockett, I don't know, slipped this into hot feeds. They put it on the recommended suggestions through the algorithm, and I don't know how it got there or got there so fast. But in the video is Jamie Raskin, Becca Balint, can't call her name, Jayapal, and Eric Swalwell. And I'm not going to play it all. You should go watch it yourself. But this is what's said. And there's another guy. I don't know. It looked like somebody from New York. I don't know if it was Schumer or I don't know who it was. But it was another person, another older guy from New York. Anyway, here we go.
Being the other ones, not us, because we were all on the right side of history. They just voted to give Trump the ability, legally, to give him the ability to deport U.S. citizens. That is what they voted for. A bunch of elected U.S. representatives. That is how they voted. Am I telling a lie, Eric, or no?
No, I got my sound here. Mouthful. No, I'm stunned.
I'm not. But I'm glad that you... okay. Eric been here longer than me, but like...
So what we said was, we even said, you know what,
That says something, that Eric says he's stunned. These people don't understand who they're dealing with. You know, they would expect something like that out of a person of color. They wouldn't be stunned. But because these are other Caucasians, he's stunned. No. Pull your head out your rear.
Many of us will not offer any more amendments tonight. We won't vote for the overall bill. But if you agree to this, we'll drop any other amendments. We'll take the win that this would be in the bill, that you would agree U.S. citizens can't be deported. They voted to allow Donald Trump to deport U.S. citizens, and they did it during the week that we learned that a 4-year-old little girl fighting cancer, a U.S. citizen, has been deported. Separated from her U.S. citizen father and her cancer treatment. So, yeah, it's kind of shocking.
Well, he's shocked. Y'all, listen now. I came in with nothing but fools. So he been here longer, so maybe he still has a little bit of shock in his life, but I don't personally. Because the fact is, we used to live in a world in which where we saw the news about that baby that got deported, the baby with cancer, because supposedly he the man that's all about the children with cancer, right? Like, that's why he made sure one of his guests was at the State of the Union was a child with cancer. So surely, even though they're cutting cancer funding, but like, it is a U.S. citizen. Like, there honestly isn't even this real thing.
So I'm going to stop right there. You can see there's another 14 minutes, 15. It was a 15-minute thing, so another 12 minutes of going on. She does cut the camera to Becca Balint and Jamie Raskin and a few others. So here's the deal. Plain, blunt, simple. This is a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation. They could easily put this together into a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation resolution against those members who have voted in contradiction to the Constitution. You cannot change law. that an American citizen can be deported. Now, it's a tricky area because, as I just said, in some cases, it's valid. In some cases, maybe you don't want an American citizen any longer in America. Maybe you want to strip their citizenship. But there needs to be certain clavats put on it. Like, you know, if you're an insurrectionist, 18 U.S.C. 2383. If you're a seditious conspiracist, 2384. Why should we house you in a prison here and keep you? You know, 2331, if you're a domestic terrorist. That includes, you know, a murderer. And I don't know how you would say who has violated the Constitution, but it needs to be looked at closer. And now, behind that, here's one of Trump's latest executive orders. And this is from a civil rights attorney named Augustus Corbett. I'm not a fan because he talks too much, too slow, and you know, he's the preacher you fall asleep on in the pew during the sermon. Anyway, there's the URL up at the top. You can stop at the ampersand t equals 480 because this is jumping right to something Trump previously said. And then you're welcome to go back and watch his whole video. There's the splash title. There's the full title. There's the date. It was posted April 30th. And again, there's only so much that can be put in a video before it just gets too long. But listen.
Do you think he's talking about? I'll show you one of them. Watch this.
Joe Biden and the defund the police Democrats have turned our once great cities into cesspools of bloodshed and crime. There's never been anything like it. Here's my plan to restore law and order in our cities and throughout our country, frankly. First, because police forces have been gutted by Democrats' war on police, I will sign a record investment in hiring, retention, and training for police officers nationwide. So important. This bill will also increase vital protections for officers because the Democrats want to take those protections away from our police because we want them to do their jobs right. You can't take their protections away if you're going to have them do their jobs properly. Second, to qualify for this new funding and all other Justice Department grants, I will insist that local jurisdictions return to proven common sense policing measures, such as stop and frisk.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Stop and frisk. Stop. Frisk. Stop and frisk. Stop and frisk. Stop and frisk. Stop and frisk.
You get the point. So, you're welcome to go watch the entire video yourself. But, here, this is another Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation. It is an 18 U.S.C. 241 violation. It is set to intent to injure, oppress, threaten, and intimidate a specific class of people in the country. Now, I don't know how to tell you this over and over again. Only Congress, Crockett, Raskin, Jayapal, Swalwell, they need to pull their heads out their rear and figure out how to prosecute Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It'll just put an end to all of this. If there isn't enough people, if 2/3 of majority will not excuse this kind of rhetoric and behavior, then Trump is barred from office. He loses his presidency. You can't be barred from office and continue to be the presidency. This will effectively remove him from the presidency. You know, Gabe said that earlier in the Jessica Denson interview. These people don't realize exactly what they're saying. You know, any member of Congress can recognize that the president is not a good person, and it's not up to the people who voted for him to keep him in there or speak again. Human rights, the human rights built in to the Constitution, will throw him out of office. Okay, this is Letitia James on a firebrand speech against and about Donald Trump. There's the URL up at the top. You can stop at the ampersand t equals 90s. This is where it jumps to. There's the splash title, the video title. There's the date it was published by Reflects Politics page. And here you go.
So let me just say a few words, because let me apologize to all of the honorees. I have to leave right after I speak. Why? One, because as you know, yesterday they fired thousands of HHS workers. And they also have stopped all of these grants. And one of the grants that they've stopped, which is close to my heart, is Head Start grants. And what I heard from my beloved Bedford-Stuyvesant is centers are closing. Region 2, which covers New York, is closed. All of the workers in Region 2, again, that covers Head Start, have been fired, terminated. The heat grants for individuals who need assistance with heat during the winter, that has been dismantled. So I've got to rush back to the office because you know that there's nothing more close to my heart than a lawsuit. And so you tell Donald Trump the lawsuit's coming. It's just a matter of hours. It's coming. And so it's great to be in here amongst so many friends and so many kindred spirits to promote a modern civil rights agenda, an agenda that includes one standard.
She has a firebrand like no other. And, you know, that's a Brooklyn girl for you. She's gonna go out there both barrels blazing. But she wins. Now, here's the problem and the answer. Yet another Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation. 18 U.S.C. 241, which is originally called the Ku Klux Klan Act, because it injures, oppresses, threatens, and intimidates others. It is a crime. It is a federal crime. But why people aren't able to speak in terms of the law, I just cannot fathom. I don't get it. If Congress does its job, gets off its butt and does its job, and somebody needs to tickle Letitia and tell her, you know what, you need to tell your state representatives to get off their butt and help you and file the type of resolution from sadpack.com to at least challenge Trump to removal. And here's the beautiful thing. This is an impeachment in reverse. It's a summary procedure. You find the conduct. You prove that the conduct happened by public record of any kind, including a YouTube video. And even if they can explain it, the Constitution does not allow for explanations. It doesn't allow for some reasoning. It just allows for your tail to be fired. You are just barred from office and nothing more. You do not come into the United States government and do those sorts of things. So, you know, this video, unlike others, is telling you what these people are saying, even though they don't realize what they're saying. Impeachment is an old man. It's an old fart. It passed gas long time ago. The smell is gone. When Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was created, it was because they recognized impeachment was ineffective, was not going to work, was never going to work when the insurrectionists are inside the government. So it turns the Constitution against you. Explain how you're not in rebellion to me, says the Constitution. Explain how you're not violating congressional laws in rebellion to the Constitution, says the Constitution. When after you've already done the act and someone can point it out, it's too late then. Your tail is cooked. The problem is, someone in Congress has to grow a pair, put it together, and file it as a complaint. So your neighbor next door ripped down your fence. You know, you think you're going to storm over to his house and put a gun to his head and demand money? Well, that's just going to get you arrested. No, you better learn the law or learn how to hire an attorney that knows the law that can do that sort of thing. That's where congressional members are. If they can't figure it out for themselves, including Raskin, Mr. Constitution, and here's the funny thing, they're all hanging out with Jasmine Crockett. Why are they all hanging out with Jazzy Jazz? They're all feeling and hoping that some of her firebrand will rub off on them. You know, she's got a lovable firebrand about her. But they're not doing their job. They're still stodgy old fools who are surprised that the Republicans are trying to do this. That's because, unfortunately, many of us, many Caucasians, don't know how to recognize racism. They see another Caucasian and they don't understand this is a racist Caucasian. You know, I shouldn't be friends with this. I shouldn't be involved with this. They can't see it coming. That was Eric Swalwell. He was shocked. Why? They came over here killing Indians, the Native Americans. They wanted to kill anyone who got in the way. Relocate them, kill them. It's been this way from the beginning. So, we shall see. The next few weeks will tell after Mr. Thanadar has filed his impeachment articles. They're not going to go anywhere. And they're also not going to go anywhere. They're not going away, but they're not going to go anywhere. Because he did it wrong. Now, next time someone files something, if they file it under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, same type of thing, a resolution calling for an amnesty vote on a summary issue of something clearly identified as the crime or misdemeanor. Remember, this is not a court of law. This is a simple recognition that you have violated the law. And in that, the punishment is an immediate bar to office, meaning you're fired. Okay, we're going to close with a Midas Touch video. Not a fan of Midas Touch. It's Ben Meiselas. He seems to choke on his own words. He doesn't know how to talk. And it's something juvenile about him. They say, he goes. Something is wrong with this guy, yet he's an attorney. Michael Popak is pretty much the same. They've, however, split up now, and they're each trying to make that YouTube dollar with their own little channels. It's about the advertising dollar, and that's all it's about. He's after the 5 million subscribers. Well, whether they subscribe on Patreon or not, they still get that advertising dollar from YouTube, 5 million, and they get that placement. So there's the title, splash. There's Trump's awful live cabinet meeting. There's the date it was posted. We're going to jump in and then jump around.
Donald Trump just held a disastrous cabinet meeting in public. It looked like an unreleased awful season of The Apprentice meets Kim Jong-un's North Korea. Donald Trump blaming all of the horrible economic news on former President Biden. This is Donald Trump, who was claiming success for the economy under former President Biden during the campaign. He said the markets love Donald so much. That's why Biden's economy is doing well. Now that Donald Trump's been
Okay.
150 billion, but you know the real facts, Donald, because we come with.
You're welcome to go watch this.
President, a lot, President Xi. I don't want it to happen. I was actually saddened to hear it, but they are getting absolutely hammered in China. And, they're sending boats, the biggest boats in the world, carrying cargo like nobody's ever seen before. These are the biggest boats in the world, biggest cargo ships in the world. And they're coming and they're turning around in the Pacific Ocean. They're doing a big U-turn and going back because they don't want the goods because 145% tariff. But at a certain point, I hope we're going to.
And this is where he's lying. This is where he's got it backwards. American businesses are not going to pay that 145% tariff because it's no longer profitable to use it. To use the Chinese products in American shelves, doesn't matter what's on the boats, doesn't matter how big they are. I'm not so sure China's getting hammered with anything because there's plenty of other places that will buy those products. Everywhere in the world buys from China, and nobody's putting a tariff on China too much except the United States. We're isolating ourselves. And this is just Trump with his 3-year-old brain lying to the American people about what's really going on. They're not going to sell here, not because China doesn't want to do the business, but because American businesses aren't going to pay that tariff.
Make a deal with China. We're talking to China, but their factories are closing all over China because we're not taking their product. We don't want their product unless they're going to be fair with us. And that includes intellectual property and other things. There are a lot of things far beyond just buy, sell.
Next up, Marco Rubio says that he and the Trump regime are now actively searching for other concentration camps in addition to El Salvador to send migrants. Play the clip.
Move quickly because this has been a team effort. We've gone to countries all over the world and said, hey, you want good relations with the United States, you need to take back your people that are here illegally. And we've had historic cooperation. Beyond that, and I say this unapologetically, we are actively searching for other countries to take people from third countries. So we are active, not just El Salvador, we are working with other countries to say, we want to send you some of the most despicable human beings.
And he's proud of that. This is the mentality that Trump has spread. Let's zip to somewhere else.
It was a very mixed signal because it's almost even, which makes it very complicated for the country. It's a pretty tight race, but he's a very nice gentleman. And
talking about Canada.
He's going to come to the White House version within the next week.
Donald Trump blames the horrific plane crash over Washington, D.C., where the airplane
we don't need that. He's talking about collision avoidance.
And American families are finding their financial footing again.
Donald Trump's chief of staff, Susan Wiles, says, this has been the greatest, you're the greatest ever. Play this clip.
Brief so you can hear from these amazing people. Congratulations to everyone on 100 days.
So this is one big pat on the back, clown show, monkey gaslighting of the American people. It doesn't change the fact that he had articles of impeachment filed at the same time, that the protests in the streets are growing, and that his 100 days is about as far as he might go if someone just wakes up and files the proper resolution to remove him and his entire administration. And we have all the true proof we need in the world. As a matter of fact, it would take a team to write up everything that Mr. Trump has done to both harm the American people, the American economy, the American status around the world. And in the end, it only takes one member of Congress to get it right. Kandahar has started it. Anybody else can file another resolution on the right path. Maybe Kandahar will be the one who refiles another resolution. So as they say, hit like and subscribe. It would help. We're not after a whole bunch of subscribers, but it would help to get to at least 1,000 subscribers so that we can then be included in the algorithm that puts our videos in the splashes that YouTube recommends that you watch. So hit like and subscribe, and keep an eye out for our next video.